Okay, so we've got a huge escalation in the ongoing conflict between the U.S. and Iran. So Iran has apparently shot down an American drone, and both sides seem to have confirmed this by now. However, there are, of course, differing stories as to what exactly preceded this shooting. Iran claims that the U.S. drone was flying over Iranian airspace. And the U.S., of course, claims that the drone never entered Iranian airspace and was flying over the Strait of Hormuz, which are international waters, and of course anybody can fly over those. And so in this situation, either side can be lying here because both have an incentive to, but both want to be proven to be the one in the right, because as it stands here, one of them is the aggressor and one of them is not. So if the U.S. entered Iranian airspace, well then Iran shooting down their drone, that's fair game. However, if Iran shot down the drone over in international airspace, well then obviously Iran is the aggressor. Now apparently, since this drone, I was reading a bit about it, it apparently is what is supposed to replace the U-2 spy plane, which of course U-2 spy planes are pretty old by now. And this drone is supposed to replace it. It's an unmanned alternative, which is probably a little smarter for a spy plane if it's supposed to be flying in dangerous situations. However, apparently doing this over a country such as Iran, where you don't have permission, is apparently a violation of international law, from what I understand. And so the U.S. may have an incentive to lie about this themselves, because they don't want to be accused of violating international law when they're trying to use that as a club against Iran. But of course, we probably won't have enough time to wait for all the details to come out about what exactly happened and what airspace this drone actually was flying in, if we can even know that for a fact. Because things have already been moving very quickly with the U.S. and Iran. We've been seeing the escalation in tension ramp up a lot over the last few weeks. And I actually shifted my forecast, since I have been forecasting a war with Iran next summer at the earliest. I did shift that because the U.S. seems to have gotten a lot more aggressive. Now, I think I figured that out. I think that the reason why the U.S. seems much more aggressive is that they're trying a brinksmanship tactic like they used on North Korea. If you remember, when early on in Trump's presidency, he was very bombastic about North Korea, kept threatening to invade them and overthrow their government and turn their country into a sheet of glass, and he threatened to nuke them and all these things. And then, but it was like he was going back and forth. You were kind of getting whiplash, because one day he would be very aggressive towards Kim and North Korea, and then the next day he'd be saying, "Oh, you know what? These are smart people, and they know how to negotiate, and we should negotiate with them." And really, what Trump was trying to do is he was trying to scare the North Koreans into thinking, "Hey, this guy's crazy. We should just negotiate and try and sit down and discuss things calmly with him." And that's what the North Koreans did, at least for a while, until John Bolton blew up that series of negotiations in Hanoi. Now, it appears to me now, based on the way Trump is talking, the way that he ratchets up this tension with Iran and then quickly tries to diffuse it, which he's done multiple times now. Most recently, I think just yesterday, he told his staff to quit the tough talk on Iran for a couple days. And I think that's because what Trump keeps trying to do is he tries to ratchet up tensions and then try and use that as leverage to pressure the other side into negotiating. And I think that what we're seeing happen here is that Iran is not having any part of it. Iran, I think, might see that Trump is trying to do to them exactly what he did with the North Koreans, and I guess they don't want any part of it. They don't want to negotiate with Trump. They don't want to, make a new deal. And so they see that Trump really is just bluffing in their view, and that he has no intention of going to war with them, just in the same way he had no intention of going to war with North Korea. And so this allows them to push on the U.S., to push Trump's buttons a bit, and really dare him to go to war. We've been seeing the last week or so quite a few attacks launched by true Iranian proxies in Iraq, for example, on bases which house foreign troops and I believe some U.S. troops too, nobody was killed. These were piddly little attacks. Of course, we also had that attack on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, or I shouldn't say on the U.S. Embassy, but near the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. We've had a bunch of little noise like this, just things that they're poking. Not real full-scale attacks. We haven't seen any 9/11s or anything. There have been no Pearl Harbors, but Iran, and of course, you had these tanker bombings, which we still don't know whether or not that was Iran. But honestly, in the context, it very well could have been. This could have just been Iran pushing the U.S.'s buttons. Again, we still have no idea. And now the Houthis, which people keep trying to tie everything that the Houthis do in with Iran. Yes, the Houthis have been launching a lot of missiles at Saudi Arabia. The Houthis have been at war with Saudi Arabia since Saudi Arabia invaded Yemen quite a few years ago, and so it should never be shocking that the Houthis are shooting at Saudi Arabia. That's what happens when you invade a country. People shoot back. However, it is possible that perhaps they're shooting more or shooting at specific targets at the behest of Iran. That is possible, though not necessarily probable. And so what I think we're witnessing here is a complete failure of Trump's maximum pressure campaign. His campaign of maximum pressure, trying to use the sanctions to squeeze Iran until they break. I think that hasn't worked, and I think that the Iranian government perhaps is willing to go down with the ship. Which, again, I have to be honest when I'm wrong. I did think that the Iranians would want to avoid a war at all costs since they are weak and know that they'll lose, but perhaps at this point that they're betting that Trump will not start the war. I think that's what we're seeing now is Iran and the U.S. playing a game of chicken. So perhaps Iran still would prefer not to have a war since they will lose, guaranteed. However, they're really playing things quite risky right now. And of course, if Trump gets roped into a conflict with Iran, I think that it's going to start out being a pretty unpopular war, probably more unpopular than Iraq when it started, and of course Iraq got very easily through Congress. I still think that a war with Iran, if Trump needed some kind of new declaration, I think that it would get through Congress, but not nearly by the wide margins that the Iraq War did. And I think that this war would become unpopular much quicker than the Iraq War. And if you remember, the Iraq War was already pretty unpopular by the 2004 election, which was like a year and a half after the war started. So I do think that it would be very difficult for Trump to win re-election if this war does kick off in Iran, and he probably understands that, which is why he has been committed really to just doing brinksmanship. However, after the U.S. has stated that this drone that was shot down was in fact in international waters, and that's their case, I think that it'll be very tough for Trump to get by without actually retaliating, whether they're in the right or not. I think that the Iranians have backed him into a corner on this one, and that he has to retaliate in some way, though I don't know how he does that without kicking off a full-scale war, because I'm sure that after that, the Iranians will continue to do a tit-for-tat until there is a full-scale war, or until the U.S. lets Iran have the last word. Now, I'm sure right now that John Bolton is talking up a storm in the president's ear and telling him about how all this proves that the Iranians only understand force, that the Iranians must be dealt with, like the animals that they are in Bolton's view, and that Trump's brinksmanship has not worked, and that all that will work is war, which is now inevitable. So on that sad note, I will sign off for today. If you can get anything of value from this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and subscribing. And if you do subscribe, please do click the bell, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you back here in the next one.